Have you ever looked into the eyes of the person who promised to love you forever, only to realize they had already chosen someone else? People say a marriage doesn't fall apart overnight. They say the cracks are always there, hiding beneath the smiles, the wedding photos, and the promises whispered under candlelight. I used to believe that wasn't true. I believed love was enough. I believed that if two people truly cared about each other, they could survive anything. I was wrong. My name is Emily, and my husband divorced me after only 9 months of marriage, because he decided the woman who sat beside him at work was worth more than the woman who shared his home. But what broke me wasn't losing my husband, it was discovering how long I had been the only one fighting for our marriage. When I met Daniel, I thought life had finally rewarded me for all the heartbreak I'd survived. He wasn't flashy. He wasn't the loudest man in the room. He was calm, gentle, patient. He remembered little things. He knew I hated onions. He knew I couldn't sleep without a blanket over my feet, even during summer. He always made sure my coffee had exactly 1 spoonful of sugar. Those tiny things made me believe I had found someone who truly saw me. Our first year together felt like a dream. We laughed over burned dinners. We danced barefoot in the kitchen while old songs played from his phone. Sometimes we'd argue over which movie to watch, and 20 minutes later we'd both fall asleep before the opening credits had even finished. I remember lying on his shoulder one rainy evening. What if we grow old and boring? I teased. He kissed my forehead. Then we'll be old and boring together. I laughed so hard that my tea nearly spilled onto the couch. That sentence stayed in my heart for years. When he proposed beside the lake where we'd had our first picnic, I cried before he even finished asking. People around us clapped. Someone even shouted, "She'd better say yes." I couldn't stop laughing through my tears. "Of course I'll marry you." I thought that moment was the beginning of forever. Instead, it was simply the beginning of my biggest lesson. Our wedding wasn't extravagant, just family, close friends. A garden filled with white roses. My father couldn't stop crying. My mother whispered as she hugged Daniel, "Take care of her." He smiled warmly. "I'll spend my whole life doing exactly that." Everyone believed him, including me. The first few months of marriage were beautiful. We painted the guest room together. Daniel accidentally stepped into a tray of blue paint. Instead of getting angry, we spent an hour chasing each other around the house, leaving little blue footprints everywhere. By sunset, the entire hallway looked like modern art. We laughed until our stomachs hurt. That night, while cleaning the floor together, he looked at me and said, "I never knew happiness could be this simple." Neither did I. Then his company hired someone new. Her name was Sophia. At first, she was simply another name that came up during dinner conversations. Our new marketing specialist is surprisingly good. Sophia fixed a project we'd been struggling with. Sophia stayed late to help everyone. I smiled politely. "I'm glad your office finally hired someone competent." Daniel chuckled. "You have no idea." I didn't think twice about it. Why would I? Trust isn't something you question in a healthy marriage. It's something you breathe without noticing. Weeks passed. Sophia's name appeared more often. We grabbed lunch after the meeting. "Sophia thinks our boss is impossible." "Sophia recommended this restaurant." "Sophia says," "Sophia believes." One evening I laughed. "I think I know more about Sophia than my own coworkers." Daniel looked surprised. "I talk about her that much?" "You do." He shrugged casually. "We work together every day." "Fair enough." I let it go. Then came the late nights. "It'll only be another hour." The project deadline got moved. The client wants changes. I have to stay. At first I believed every word. I'd leave dinner in the oven. I'd text him, "Take your time, drive safely, love you." Sometimes he'd answer, sometimes he wouldn't. I convinced myself he was simply busy. Marriage requires trust. That's what everyone says, right? One Friday I cooked his favorite meal, homemade lasagna, garlic bread, chocolate cake. It wasn't our anniversary. There wasn't a special occasion. I just wanted to surprise him. I lit candles, changed into the blue dress he once called his favorite. I looked at the clock. 7 o'clock. No. Daniel. 8. Nothing. 9. Still nothing. I called straight to voicemail. At 10:30, headlights finally appeared outside. Relief rushed through me. I hurried to the door. "There you are." Daniel walked inside looking exhausted. "I'm sorry. You could have called. My phone died." I smiled anyway. Come on. Dinner's waiting. He glanced toward the dining table. Oh, what? I already ate. The smile slowly disappeared from my face. With your team? He loosened his tie. Yeah. I tried to laugh. You couldn't have texted before your phone died? I forgot. Forgot. One single word. It landed heavier than I expected. I looked at the untouched candles, the cold lasagna, the cake I'd spent 2 hours decorating. He didn't even notice. I'm going to shower, he said. The bathroom door closed. I stood alone in the dining room. The candles had almost burned out. The food was cold. The silence felt colder. For the first time since our wedding, our house didn't feel like home. Little things began disappearing. His phone was suddenly always face down. He smiled at messages he never shared. If I walked into the room unexpectedly, the screen would go dark. When I asked what was funny, he'd simply say, just work stuff. Work, that word became a wall between us. One Saturday morning, I reached for his hand while we watched television. He didn't even realize. His fingers stayed wrapped around his phone instead. I slowly pulled my hand back into my lap. He never noticed, not once, and somehow that hurt even more than if he had pushed me away. Late that night, as he slept soundly beside me, I stared at the ceiling. The room was dark, but something inside me had begun to wake up. A quiet fear. A fear I couldn't explain, the kind that whispers long before the truth arrives. I closed my eyes and prayed I was imagining things. I had no idea that only a few weeks later, one unexpected message would shatter everything I believed about love, marriage, and the man sleeping peacefully beside me. What would you do if the message that destroyed your marriage wasn't even meant for you? Some people say the truth always finds its way into the light. I wish that weren't true, because sometimes the truth doesn't knock politely. Sometimes it tears the door off its hinges and leaves your heart bleeding on the floor. The morning everything changed started like every other Saturday. I woke before Daniel. The sunlight slipped through the curtains, painting soft golden lines across our bedroom. For a moment, I watched him sleeping. His face looked peaceful. Innocent. It was the same face I had kissed goodbye every morning, the same face that had smiled at me while promising forever. I reached over and brushed a strand of hair away from his forehead. He didn't stir. His phone buzzed on the nightstand once, twice, 3 times. Normally, I would never have touched it. Not because I believed married people should never look at each other's phones, but because I believed trust meant not needing to. The screen lit up again. A message appeared before it locked. Last night was perfect. I wish you didn't have to go home to her. My heart stopped. My eyes refused to blink. Maybe I had read it wrong. Maybe it wasn't Daniel's phone. Maybe. There are moments when your mind creates 1,000 lies because the truth is too painful to accept. With trembling hands, I picked up the phone. The screen hadn't locked completely. He had changed the password only a few days earlier, but the message preview remained. It wasn't my imagination. It wasn't a misunderstanding. The sender's name read, Sophia, the woman whose name had quietly moved into our home months ago, the woman I had smiled about, the woman I had never considered a threat. My hand shook so violently that I almost dropped the phone. Daniel stirred. I quickly placed it back where it had been and hurried into the kitchen before he woke. I leaned against the counter, trying to breathe. No tears came. Not yet. Shock has a strange way of freezing the heart before it breaks it. Daniel walked downstairs 20 minutes later. Morning. He kissed my forehead. That simple kiss almost made me sick. You okay? He asked. You seem quiet. I looked directly into his eyes. Who is Sophia to you? The color drained from his face so quickly that he didn't even try to hide it. What kind of question is that? I asked a simple question. She's my coworker. Only your coworker? He laughed, not because anything was funny, because people laugh when they're buying time. You've been watching too many dramas. I saw her message. Silence. The room felt smaller. Even the ticking clock seemed too loud. Daniel rubbed the back of his neck. You weren't supposed to see that. Those words pierced deeper than any apology ever could. Not, I'm sorry. Not, it isn't what you think. Only, you weren't supposed to see. I stared at him. So it's true. He looked away. It just happened. It just happened? His voice became defensive. We've been working together every day. I didn't ask how often you worked together. It wasn't planned. I laughed. A broken laugh that didn't sound like mine. You accidentally fell in love with someone else? He slammed his coffee mug onto the counter. You don't understand. No. I nodded slowly. I understand perfectly. The following weeks became a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Daniel stopped pretending. He barely spoke during dinner. Sometimes he didn't even come home. When I asked where he had been, he simply answered, out. Nothing more. One evening I stood in front of him with tears streaming down my face. Please. He sighed heavily. Emily, tell me what I did wrong. You didn't do anything. Then why? He closed his eyes. I'm just not happy anymore. Those words echoed through every corner of my soul. Not happy. 9 months, only 9 months, our wedding flowers hadn't even completed a full year of blooming and fading. I remembered my father's trembling hands as he walked me down the aisle. My mother's smile. Our vows, were they worth only 9 months? Was forever really measured in seasons? A week later, Daniel came home carrying an envelope. He didn't even sit down. I've already signed. He placed the papers on the dining table. Divorce, the word blurred before my eyes. You already decided? He nodded. I think it's best. For who? Silence. For us. No. I shook my head. It isn't for us. I pushed the papers back toward him. It's for you. He didn't deny it. That hurt the most. I've fallen in love with Sophia. There it was. No excuses. No lies, just the truth, the ugly, devastating truth. I couldn't breathe. I looked around our living room, the couch we'd picked together, the wedding photograph hanging above the fireplace, the little ceramic dog we'd bought during our honeymoon because we couldn't stop laughing at how ugly it was. Every corner held memories. To me. To him, they were already history. I never wanted to hurt you. His voice sounded almost tired. I looked at him through tears. And yet you've become very good at it. The divorce happened faster than I ever imagined. Friends stopped calling, some chose sides, others simply disappeared because heartbreak makes people uncomfortable. One afternoon I ran into an old neighbor at the grocery store. Oh, she looked embarrassed. I heard about Daniel. I forced a smile. I'm okay. She squeezed my arm. No, sweetheart. You aren't. That was the first time I cried in public. Not because she pitied me, because someone finally admitted I didn't have to pretend. After the divorce was finalized, I packed the last box from our apartment. Every object carried a memory: his favorite coffee mug, our honeymoon shell. A movie ticket from our first date. I held the wedding album in my hands for several minutes, then quietly placed it into the donation box. Some memories deserve to stay with you. Others only keep reopening wounds. I carried the final box outside. As I locked the apartment door one last time, I whispered, goodbye. Not just to the apartment, not just to the marriage, but to the version of myself who believed love meant holding on no matter how much it hurt. Life didn't magically become easier. Some mornings I couldn't get out of bed, some nights I cried until sunrise, but slowly, very slowly, I began remembering who I had been before I became somebody's wife. I joined a painting class, started running in the mornings, visited my parents every weekend. For the first time in months, I laughed without forcing it. Felt strange, almost unfamiliar. One afternoon my mother watched me mixing paint onto a canvas. She smiled softly. I've missed seeing that sparkle in your eyes. I thought I'd lost it forever. She squeezed my hand. No. You only buried it beneath someone else's choices. 3 months later, I was leaving the art studio when I heard my name. Emily. I turned around. Standing across the street was Daniel. He looked different. His shoulders were slumped, dark circles framed his eyes. The confidence he'd worn like an expensive suit had disappeared. He opened his mouth as if searching for the right words. I've been hoping I'd run into you. I stood quietly, then my eyes drifted to the empty ring finger on his hand. Something had changed, something he hadn't expected, and as he took one hesitant step toward me, I realized the story he had chosen over our marriage was already beginning to fall apart. Have you ever watched someone throw away everything they once swore they couldn't live without, only to realize too late that they had destroyed the one thing that truly mattered? people think the hardest part of divorce is signing the papers. It isn't. The hardest part is waking up one morning and realizing the pain no longer controls you, because that's the day you understand something terrifying. You don't need the person who broke your heart anymore, and when they finally come looking for you're already gone. Daniel stood on the other side of the street, shifting nervously from one foot to the other. For a moment, I barely recognized him. This wasn't the confident man who had walked out of our marriage believing the grass would always be greener. His suit was wrinkled, his eyes looked tired, the smile that used to come so easily never appeared. He walked toward me slowly. "Hi." I nodded politely. "Hello, Daniel." He looked surprised by my calm voice. "I wasn't sure you'd stop." "I almost didn't." He swallowed. "I just wanted to see how you've been." I smiled faintly. "I'm doing well." He stared at me as if trying to find the broken woman he had left behind. Instead, he found someone standing straight, holding a paint portfolio in one hand and a quiet confidence in the other. "You look different." "I am." There was an awkward silence, then he asked, "Are you seeing someone?" I almost laughed, not because it was funny, because after everything, that was the question he wanted answered. "My happiness isn't measured by whether I'm with someone." He lowered his eyes. "I guess you always were stronger than I realized." "No." I shook my head gently. "I became stronger because I had no other choice." Over the next few weeks, Daniel found reasons to contact me. First, it was about a tax document, then an old insurance paper, then a package that had been delivered to his address by mistake. Each conversation grew a little longer, each excuse became a little thinner. Finally, one afternoon, he called. "Would you meet me for coffee?" I hesitated, not because I wanted him back, because I wanted to know why. We met at a small cafe we had once loved. The same corner table was empty. The waitress recognized us. Her smile faded when she realized we weren't there as husband and wife anymore. She quietly placed two menus on the table. Neither of us opened them. Daniel rubbed his hands together. Sophia left. I simply looked at him. No surprise. No satisfaction. Just silence. He sighed deeply. "I guess I deserve that reaction." "What happened?" He gave a bitter smile. "The same way she came into my life, she walked into someone else's." I blinked. "I found out she'd been seeing another coworker." His laugh sounded hollow. "Ironic, isn't it?" I didn't answer, because irony wasn't the first word that came to mind. Consequences was. He stared into his untouched coffee. "She told me she needed excitement." His voice cracked. "She said our relationship felt ordinary." I remembered standing in our kitchen, begging him to tell me what I had done wrong. I remembered him saying he wasn't happy anymore. The words had come full circle. Daniel looked up. "I think about us every day." I remained quiet. "I miss our movie nights. Our stupid kitchen dances. The way you'd leave little notes in my lunch." His eyes filled with tears. I didn't understand what I had until I lost it. For the first time since our divorce, I saw genuine regret, not because Sophia had left, because he finally understood the value of loyalty after chasing excitement. "I'm sorry." Those two words hung between us. Months ago, I had dreamed of hearing them. I had imagined they would heal everything. Instead, they felt strangely small, like trying to stop a flood with an umbrella. "I know saying sorry doesn't fix anything." "No," I answered softly. "It doesn't. I hurt the one person who never stopped believing in me." "You did." "I don't expect forgiveness." "I know." He wiped his eyes. "But if there's even the smallest chance," he couldn't finish. I knew exactly what he wanted to ask. I reached into my bag and took out something I'd carried for weeks. A folded piece of paper. I placed it on the table. He frowned. "What's this?" "Open it." His hands trembled as he unfolded it. It wasn't a letter. It was a photograph, our wedding day, but something had changed. The picture had been carefully cut in half. My side remained. His side was gone. Only a small empty space stood beside me. He looked at it for a long time. Finally, tears rolled down his face. "I understand. I kept that picture because I wanted to remember the woman I was." I smiled sadly. The woman who believed promises meant forever. "And now?" Now I believe actions matter more than promises. He nodded slowly. I deserve that. This isn't about what you deserve. He looked at me. It's about what I deserve. Months passed, life continued. I was promoted at work. My paintings were displayed in a local gallery. My parents smiled more often because they no longer worried every time they heard my voice. One Saturday afternoon, my father stood beside one of my paintings. You know what I see? What? You. I laughed. It's just a landscape. He shook his head. No. I see someone who survived a storm. Nearly a year after the divorce, I received a handwritten letter, not an email, not a text. A letter. It was from Daniel. He wrote that therapy had forced him to face uncomfortable truths. He admitted he had confused attention with love. He had mistaken excitement for commitment. He realized that relationships don't fail because life becomes ordinary. They fail when someone stops appreciating the ordinary moments that once felt extraordinary. At the end of the letter, he wrote, "You gave me a home, and I traded it for a feeling that disappeared as quickly as it arrived. Losing you was the greatest consequence of my own choices. I hope your future is filled with the peace I failed to protect." I folded the letter carefully, then I placed it inside a memory box, not because I wanted to hold on to the past, because it reminded me of something important. Regret can change a person, but it cannot rewrite history. A few weeks later, I visited the little lake where Daniel had once proposed. The same bench was still there, the water shimmered beneath the evening sun. I sat quietly, listening to the gentle waves against the shore. An elderly woman settled beside me. She smiled warmly. "Beautiful evening." "It really is." After a moment, she looked at my peaceful expression and asked, "Are you waiting for someone?" I smiled as I gazed across the water. "No. I'm finally enjoying my own company." She smiled knowingly. "That's a wonderful place to arrive." As the sun slowly disappeared behind the horizon, I realized something I had never understood during those painful months. The end of my marriage wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of a life where I no longer begged to be chosen, because the greatest love I found after losing my husband was the quiet, unshakable love I finally learned to give myself. And for the first time in a very long time, when I walked away, I didn't look back.